Hey everyone, my name's Jack and I'm the Avid Assistant. So for this video I'm going to tackle the rather large purple elephant that's been in the room with Avid for about 4 years now, and that is Titler Plus. And it's not had the best start, and there's a lot of factors there, and I'll get into some of that. But as the title of the video suggests, I want to get into a few different aspects of it. So I want to show the good, the parts of it that are working great and well, and well thought out design parts, and new features that we couldn't do in the old title tool. The bad, which would be things we've given up that we could do in the old title tool. It's some things that we've lost and whatnot. And the ugly. And so the ugly is what I would consider, sort of the biggest problems. And a lot of these are obvious, and a lot of these you'd already know, but in case you're still on 2018 and you haven't really had the pleasure of jumping forward into Titler Plus or experience it for yourself yet, we'll go through some of that stuff as well. And then I'll give some final thoughts at the end as to where I think Titler Plus is at now, and after these few years, sort of how it's doing, whether I think you should bother upgrading to it or not, whether I think you should bother using it or not, or whether you should stick to your workarounds. So let's jump in. Now, before we get started, I should mention that I am doing this on the latest version of Avid, which at time of recording is 2022.10, and macOS 12.6. I'm going to try to start mentioning that in all my videos as to what the setup was when I was recording, so you have a baseline to compare to. So the good. I'm going to demonstrate some of the features of Titler Plus now. We'll make a few titles. I'll give my verdict on it as I'm doing it. If you've seen the channel before, I like to live demonstrate the stuff rather than just talk about it. So I'm going to recreate this title. Don't want to destroy the one that's there. I'll mark in and out that area. And then I'm going to hit the Titler Plus icon. Simple enough. Now you could also drag and drop the title from your effects palette. It's under title, there it is. But I don't want to open this up with the effect editor. And generally speaking, you want to stay away from the effect editor with Titler Plus. So Titler Plus, and then the effect editor and the Titler Plus dashboard pop up. So this dashboard will contain all of the controls that you'll need to use it. And I think it's actually one of the better parts about Titler Plus. And this has, come a long way, and it's had an evolution or two since it was initially instated. But, everything is fairly self-explanatory. Your kerning, your leading, your fonts. We get a live preview of all the fonts as we're scrolling. Creating shapes, moving groups of, different shapes in the order of they're in, and all of our, text and item controls. I feel like it's very well laid out. That part works fine. And all I need to do to start making my title is to enable the text field here and type and click in the frame and get typing. So page break productions. And now the box that the titles appeared in, the text box essentially, Avid calls it a bounding box. To select it, to get to it, just click away from it first and then select it. And then we can move it about. Now that's looking a bit big, definitely bigger than what our previous one was. So I'm going to put that down to about 80 points. I will center anchor it so I can move it around better. And then I'll align it in the center, both horizontally and vertically. Nice and simple. That was really quick. And then I'll just move my position up a bit as well, because I'm going to put another title below it. Cool. Now next, we'll make the presents. Should be really quick. Another text box. Type presents. Click away. Select the box. We'll do the same centering. And I'm going to make this one a bit smaller, so if that one was 80, this one could be, say, 50. And I'll move it up along the y-axis so it's right beneath. And there we go. Nice and simple. I have my title, play it down, no problem. And that was relatively quick and painless to make. I think you would agree. And we didn't have much trouble. Now, I can hear you saying already, that was a really, really simple title, Jack. That wasn't really much problem. Yes, it was. So let's do something else. So over here, we have our lead character of this particular short film called Jerry. He's a bank manager within the story. And we're going to create a little lower third for him. It's going to pop up in the shop, just say Jerry, bank manager. So let's do that. And we can keyframe some movement as well. Because I've seen people on the Avid Editors or Facebook channel talking about how you can't keyframe movement on Titler Plus. You definitely can, and I've been doing it for a while. I used Titler Plus on a feature film through 2019, 2020 without too many problems, and been using it more and more since, especially in the last two versions, because it's came a long way. But our lower third. So instead of our titler, I'm going to start by clicking the square here, and I'm going to make a shape like so. Then I'm going to, then I'll change the color a bit actually. So I'll change this to get a nice blue. There we go. And then I'll set it so that it's just popping in. Increase the shadow a little bit. Yeah. Right. Got a background. That's enough fiddling around with that, Jack. So let's put some text in. So we'll go text. Jerry is his name. Oh, no, we don't want that. That's a horrible color. Blue on blue. I'll make him yellow. There we go. Jerry. Now I'll go back into that. So I'll just do a return, new line, and I'll go bank manager. Right. Now I'll select all my text. If you double click on any word, nice and simple, you'll select that word. Triple click, you'll select everything in the bounding box, like so. I'm going to align it all left. That looks a bit better. Then I'm going to select my bank manager line and make this a bit smaller. So say, where are we? Font size. I'll make that one about 75. That's not bad. Change my leading to make these a bit closer together. There we go. And then I'll just move Jerry over in the shape a bit. Right, now once you're happy with the rough placement, and I'm demonstrating all this as in the good section because I think this is all very simple and very logically laid out of where all is. I can then move it over into my edge, and then once I'm happy with how everything's laid out, I can just drag select it all, and I can click this button over here to group all these items, and now it's just one thing. I can manipulate it all as one thing. So I will do that. I'll just trim it in a bit because don't need it that big. Sweet. Now we've got our lower third. Now I did say that I would keyframe on and off in the shot, so let's do that. So I'll add a keyframe here, and I'll jump forward, say 8 frames, maybe 2 more, and add another keyframe there. Then go back to my first one and minus 320, say that. Cool. And now we've got our 2 keyframes. That's going to keyframe on. So I can come out of the titler tool, and you'll see as I play over it, Jerry, bank manager, slides on. Nice and simple.
The British Army has left 1 soldier, a civilian, and 3 guns.
So yeah, at least in my experience, in my opinion, it is relatively intuitive the way it's laid out. You know, we've got all our fonts, we've got all our controls. You know, even the controls that I didn't know what they meant didn't take long to figure out. We can toggle on and off the background, you know, to make it easier to see things while we're making the title. Or just have that toggled off if you want to have a title that sort of interrupts and comes in. Got our title safe there. And you can save, you know, your defaults and preferences and load them up at any given time with the little menu down here. So, you know, the way it's laid out, Titler Plus, the dashboard, manipulating titles, creating them, I find quite simple. Now, there's a million different instances of titles, and obviously I'm not going to test and demonstrate them all right now, but I would like to say that if there is one that you feel like you've tried to make in Titler Plus, or you think Titler Plus can't do, let me know in a comment, because I'd be really curious to give it a go myself in Titler Plus in Avid and see if I can get it to work. Because so far I haven't really found many titles, although that being said, I don't do, you know, that in-depth titling. I'm more offline of scripted content. Yeah, I haven't run into a need for a title that I couldn't do in Titler Plus as of yet. Even scrolling credits, I found quite simple. I'm not going to do it just now because I've already done it in another video. So I'll just have that playing in the background. It'll be playing at the moment somewhere just now. You can see me doing that. And I was able to create the titles without too much fuss and have them scroll without much of an issue. So that's definitely one that we can do as well. And on the note of scrolling credits, our old title tool was sort of hampered by the fact that it sort of made media at 2 minutes, I believe it was. You could create a static title for about 2 minutes in length, and it was media, and it was stuck at 1080p. Whereas because this is an effect rather than a title, you know, we can use it at any resolution that you can have your Avid project set to, and duration is pretty much irrelevant because it's an effect, so you can just roll it out however long you need it. So there's another couple in the plus column, no pun intended. But lastly, I also just want to demonstrate a neat feature that was added to the Titler Plus, where if I go timeline clip notes, the text of our titles is automatically added to the timeline clip notes. And this way we can see all of our titles, you know, start in and out, a duration. We can see that in frames and export that data out. And now this may not be useful to a lot of you, but this is particularly great for sort of animation and some VFX workflows, because you can have slugs for all of your shots, you know, so sequence 10, shot 10, for example, shot 20, shot 30, shot 40, and easily stretch it out, you know, and at any given time you can export the durations of those shots based on the name, you know, and it doesn't matter what naming convention the animators are using, or you don't need to have really long names. You can use your timeline. You can use the timeline clip notes of your titler, which is a nice, handy feature. You can slap it into an EDL as well if that works for you. But that's a nice, neat little trick that Titler Plus can do. Now, at this point, I can practically hear all the viewers watching, all the seasoned Avid editors screaming at their monitor because they've all had so many bad experiences, and they want me to actually get to the real thoughts of Titler Plus and the bad. So let's talk about some of that. And to do that, I'm going to need a drink, so just to be honest with you, I've got a beer ready here for this. Here we go. First off, one of the weird things about Titler Plus that, again, has gotten a lot better in this version, but is still present, is it seems to be particularly demanding, weirdly demanding, on processor power. Now, the more modern your system is, the less this may be a problem. But if you're running like a cheese grater Mac or a PC from, you know, even, you know, a few years back, you know, pre-2018, 2017, and you don't have a heck of a lot of processor power, but normally plenty enough for Avid running, this can overtax it, and it can cause drop frames and unrendered frames, and it can sort of demand that you render it before playback. And let's be real, how many of us really render our effects in Media Composer? And we like to, you know, to just render on the fly as it's playing back, and then, you know, render everything when it's exporting, which is perfectly legitimate, and we've been doing it for years as Avid editors. Yeah, this can be a really, really taxing little devil. You know, like I've had multiple timecode generators using all 4 generators and the text tool, like 2 or 3 of them stacked, and it's still using less CPU than the Titler Plus is. I don't get why, I don't know what it's doing. I assume it's because it's their newest effect that Avid themselves have made, and they're trying to take advantage of newer hardware, newer code base, but it's taking a little bit too much advantage potentially. But like I said, for if you're on a newer system, this isn't quite as bad. Like as you've seen when I've been creating these and playing them back. Another example in the bad column, I've opened up here an old project. This was the only one I could find that still had titles on it from Title Tool. And the title's on the timeline there, it's media offline. I can't recreate the title. If I go edit title, it just says title tool is no longer supported, please use a different titler. If I try timeline recreate title media, it crashes the Avid. So I can't easily revive that project. I suppose the only way I could do it is if I was to bring back an export, lay it in, see what the title looked like, recreate it manually in Titler Plus or another titler. But, you know, in terms of archival of Avid sequences and then being able to revive them, bring them up, load them up, which is something that Avid historically has been very good at, arguably the best out of all the NLEs, has been legacy support. You know, you can open up a project, an Avid project from 5, 10, 12 years ago and load the timeline and there it is. Titles has never really been an issue in that regard. So that's a major drawback, that we can't do that. Or there isn't some kind of translation layer or a way that it can be moved into or promoted to Titler Plus. I thought at one point there was. I didn't seem to be able to find it there, and all of the main routes, as you saw me check, did not work. If it's really important to you to be able to hold on to your older projects, it's not so much of an issue for me, so to speak. That is one to know. No, I will say on this note before I move on from it that if you had all of the media, if you had made a tool, the old title tool, in an old project, and you had rendered the media, and the media was still there in Avid Media files, then it would still show up on your timeline because it's still reading the media. But if you hadn't rendered it, then if you hadn't saved the render, or if you hadn't rendered the title, then you know, it won't be able to regenerate that media. It won't be able to see it from the effect. Right, now before we move on to the ugly, I want to say just one more little gripe about a lacking feature, which to me seems, you know, absolutely stupid. So I can keyframe movement, right, of my titles coming in and out. That's not a problem. But as far as I can tell, I can't keyframe opacity, like to fade on the title. Now, I can add on, from quick transition, just a little dissolve, which I've seen lots of other people doing from screen grabs online and stuff, and that does work. But if it's a known bug that the effect is overtaxing the system and causing drop frames, I don't want to layer more effects on top of it, so to speak. So, and I would ideally like the control to be able to do that and manipulate and fade on different objects at different opacities within the Titler Plus app, because if this is meant to be an all-encompassing title tool, I want to be able to keyframe the opacity of the items I make in the title tool. So yeah, that bothers me. So I'll select just the first keyframe just to demonstrate and show you, because I thought I could do this with fill. And when I do that, like, shadow is what I wanted to do. Doesn't work. Like, it'll just globally affect the item. It doesn't respect the keyframe. Even though fill should be the one to do it, you know, because you can see by the way I scroll that up and on, it is affecting the opacity. But for some reason it won't let me keyframe it. I know it's probably surprising to some of you, but that's my biggest issue with it. But I find it really annoying. Yeah, I just checked to make sure, tried it in the effect editor. It does the same thing there, just affects it globally. So, really annoying. But anyway, I'll move on from a little rant about the opacity. And let's move on to the ugly. So the ugly isn't quite something I can demonstrate. This is more just talking about what most of the Avid community already knows. And to be, you know, trying to see both sides of this, probably Avid as a company, I have been trying very hard, and there have been a lot of bug fixes as each version's come out. Like most of the bug fixes that I've seen in the release notes, are addressing the Titler Plus tool. So they are trying very hard, and they're probably sick of hearing us Avid users complain about this and mention it all again and again. But I would say that as time goes on, it kind of just becomes more and more justified. The level where the Titler Plus tool is at the moment is ideally where we would have wanted it at launch, and then them improving and tinkering it from there. Now, I get that they were under pressure from Apple because they were about to drop support for 32-bit code, and, they had to get their new version with a new UI out sooner rather than later. And I'm not a developer, so I can't really critique too hard, but I don't know what it would have taken to, migrate the existing title tool over to a 64-bit version that would allow them to keep using it. If that could have just been run through a compiler, I don't really know how it works. But I sort of feel like they might have been better off doing that, and allowing us both of them the option until this was ready to be used, and then they could have released it, or given us both at the same time, so we had the option. I know on Windows you still kind of do have the legacy elements for now, but some of it is it was not ready when it debuted. As we all know, there have been a whole number of issues and bug fixes and problems with it causing crashes, or it causing slowdowns, or it causing freeze-ups, or, a whole bunch of issues, some of them seeming entirely unrelated, stemming from the Titler Plus. And the fact that it debuted kind of more than 4 years ago now, because it came out during 2018's reign, is a bit of a problem. Now, as I say, I did use it during 2020 on a feature, doing simple titles right enough, placeholders and the main title for the film and stuff like that. But I'm just one person. I can only speak to my experiences and how it's run on mine. But if even half of the stories we've seen about Titler Plus are true, it's a problem. And everyone who's been so monumentally frustrated with it is right and justified to feel that way. Also, you may have seen me on Facebook or on some of my other videos trying to justify the Titler Plus tool and saying how it's not so bad, or it's got better and newer versions, and it has, especially in the last two. But those are, as I say, in 2022 versions. It has taken quite a while to get there. And if you were on a Mac, or if you didn't have the option but to upgrade your OS, some time ago, and you were on Catalina, and then you no longer had the option of the old title tool, you were kind of stuck. You had to make this work, or you would use some other method. Lots of people have been using Photoshop and After Effects to bring titles in, or Boris or other offerings. Although I do regularly say that it has got a lot better, and it has, it's taken a bit too long about it, and it's not an additional tool. It's not a luxury tool. It's a title tool. It has to be there and it has to work. Just has to. And that sort of is the crux of the ugly. And to say that it's been such an issue, that there has have to been such complicated workarounds in order to make your titles and your edits, it's not been great, as a lot of I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir to certain people here. But Jack, with all this being said, all this good, bad and ugly, where do we stand now with Title Tool? Is it ready? Should we use it? Should we look at other workflows? Should we just not bother with it and get a different titler and bite the bullet? Or should we move NLE to Premiere or something else? So I can only give my opinion on this and my editor's take, pun intended. And that is that I think you should stick with Titler Plus, personally. And here's why. As I've been saying, it has gotten a lot better. If you're on a relatively new machine, the CPU overtaxing issue isn't so much of a problem now. Yeah, I feel like if you get yourself familiar with it, we can play directly on the frame. We're not opening a separate window to play around. It's quick, it's fast, The dashboard, I feel, is quite intuitive. Although, to be fair, that is not the dashboard that Avid launched the Titler Plus tool with. It has gotten better and been refined since then. And, if you've been following Chris Bove and Avid's updates on Avid Editors of Facebook, you'll have seen that the Avid Titler Plus tool was handed over to a new development team in January of 2021, I think. And the updates that have been coming out since that time have been much better. Granted, that's still nearly 2 years ago. But in that time, each subsequent update has made a significant improvement, both in the layout, simplifying things, and in the performance of the Titler Plus tool. And since I've actually been advocating it, a couple of people who follow the channel, I'm going to call out Alvin Burrell here, have told me that in the most recent version of 2022.10, it's been working much better for them as well. I believe the direct quote from Alvin was the first Avid version where the titler was usable, so it's not necessarily just me saying it. And like I said earlier, each release does have the release notes filled with bug fixes for Titler Plus. Avid is obviously aware this is an issue, it's a priority for them, they're doing everything they can. And if you can jump to the latest version and create new settings, please, when you do, then give it a shot, see for yourself. Download the latest version, have a play around. Avid's got some great videos on Titler Plus and how it works and how you use it. I've demonstrated it here on the channel a couple of times, and yeah, it's quite simple. So that's my take. I know it's probably not going to be that popular because I've seen on the Avid Editors on Facebook channel and other forums, Avid Editors and the Avid official forums, that it's not the most popular tool, and a lot of editors seem to be quite adamant they just hate it and that's the end of it. But I would implore you to give it another shot. Just the same way I've managed to convert a whole number of editors to the new Avid UI and the paneled workflow. If things don't work so well for you at the start, keep going, give it a shot, and you can get there in the end. But so there's my take on Avid's Titler Plus, where it's at. It's had a very long, rocky road to begin with. It's definitely had its more than fair share of problems, but it has been getting solidly better continuously in the last 3 or 4 versions, and especially if you're on a relatively recent system. So definitely still worth checking out, still worth using. At least in my opinion. I'm sure there's plenty of you that are going to tell me in the comments or messages elsewhere that I'm wholeheartedly wrong and we should just crucify and burn the Titler Plus tool. And that is entirely your right to feel that way. I am just letting you know my take. So yeah, I'm gonna go now and drink some more of my beer and prepare myself for the inevitable trolling that I'm going to get once this video drops on Thursday. And you'll start telling me, what an idiot I am for using Titler Plus. I'll see you guys then.